Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Now normally I'd be here talking about the latest patch notes, but due to the ongoing situation in Ukraine, obviously things have changed this month and we're probably not going to get anything for a couple of weeks, if not potentially a couple of months. So whilst all that is going on, and I'm not really going to get into it just because it's a big topic, one thing we can do in the game right now is it gives us time to actually look at some of the champions we may have vaulted and have been improved or changes. Or we could be working on things like masteries, we could be working on champions that we've just not had the time to because of events are going on. It gives us a good bit of time to kind of have a, okay, what do we want to work on kind of thought process. So what I want to do in this video is I want to actually cover Bystophus, who recently got a buff and has been kind of like an old style champion for a while and has kind of probably sat in a lot of people's vaults. And hopefully by the end of this video, I'll have given you a few ideas you may consider could add some value to your roster. Now, he's not necessarily a top tier champion after his change, but he still could be interesting or a bit of fun for you. And if you've pulled him and you're in the early to mid game, he's actually quite a powerful champion now for those types of accounts that are progressing. So let's take a look at Bystophus. I like to call him as an honorary member of the Blue Man group. For any of people who don't know what that means, go Google it. It's an old kind of drum band that used to paint themselves blue. And he's very, 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 very blue. And he looks kind of cool. The swords look at them like some sort of flaming thing. Obviously this is a 2019 champion, so the artwork and styling has improved dramatically over the course of the game's progression. But what makes Bystophus unique? The first thing that makes him unique in my book is his attack number. Now typically when you're looking at a damage dealer, if they're an epic, their attack number is normally in the region of 1400 to maybe a top 1550, maybe 1600 at a push, but generally it's in that 1400 to 1500 range. For a legendary champion, that tends to be sort of plus 100, about 1500 to around about 1600, and then you have a few outliers who are close to 1650. No one comes really that close to this guy's base attack other than a few champions. So we're talking, I think, in the same faction, I think it's this faction, or it might be Undead Hordes. We have a Nithui. No, he's not Undead Hordes. Which faction is a Nithui in? Demon Spawn. There he is. He's the second highest at 1729. Now, Bystophus is at 1795. So he's almost 1800 base attack. It is the highest base attack in the game. And I think the other few champions you've got, Nogdar, it's around 1696. We've got in the Dark Elves, I think Ruel, who is also a very big hitter, is around 1696. But you can see he's got 100 base attack higher pretty much than the average, 150 give or take. That's the first thing that kind of makes him unique. And you almost sort of assume, well, if he's got a high base attack, then clearly he'll do a lot of damage. It's not quite the case. As most experienced players will know, a stat alone doesn't make up the damage. You've got multipliers, you've got book damage, you've got different other masteries, different other effects. Now, he does have a lot of damage in his books. We've got 30% on his A2, we've got 15% on his A3, and 20% on his A1. So there is a lot of damage in the books, which is good, but he's not quite at the top tier. And we'll kind of cover the comparisons to other champions as we look at the damage side. The other thing that makes him unique is his A2. This is his strongest ability, not his A3, for damage purposes, and it will instantly crit on any champion, enemy champion, or enemy boss, but typically bosses are immune to this debuff, who has block active skills debuff. So the idea here is if you AoE with block active skills, he will then crit all the time with that ability. So that opens up an opportunity for you to build him a different way to the way you would normally build a typical damage dealer, and we'll cover that later on in the video. And the third thing that makes him unique is he is the only champion in the game that has now, and this is recently as a buff, 100% chance to place block active skills and decrease defense on an AoE on a 4-turn cooldown for 2 turns. Do have to be considerate of affinity. He is force, so he will weak it against magic, against spirit, sorry. So obviously people like Duchess is a bit of a problem. People like Valkyries is also another bit of a problem, and which we're going to cover when we cover the faction war section here. It's kind of a bit annoying, but it's not so bad. But the change they made in the recent patch notes is they brought him from 50% chance booked to 75% to 75% chance booked to 100%. Now, if you're in the early game, mid game, this change makes him one of your best champions if you haven't got a lot of champions, because he instantly allows you to control waves so long as you can tank the basic A1 ability damage. So your big hitters, the buff strippers, the enemy waves, all those kind of things can't happen. He's actually very, very good for that role. And to top that off, if you then land the block active skills, he has a true fear with about a 50% chance on his A1 and also another chance to place block active skills. So he's kind of got 3 distinct ways you can build this champion. You can build him a typical damage dealer and try and basically forget the whole debuff side of things and just have use his strong base attack and then have a damage dealer. For most players, apart from your top end plat, he will do significant damage. He's pretty good. He's force based, which is nice into a lot of magic based champions you will find in the arena in early to mid game. And in late game, he can be in a lot of fun teams, but he's not going to be able to compete with Trunder. He's not going to be able to compete with Ethos and those top level champions. That's one way to build him. The other way you can build him is assuming you're going to have the debuff, and that means you can basically gut crit rate out of his build and just push as much attack and crit damage as you can to try and abuse the base stat, and then just focus on hopefully killing everyone with this A2. If you don't, then obviously you're playing devil's advocate with the fact that you haven't got 100% crit rate for his secondary AoE. The third way you can build him is purely as a debuffer and a control champion. So you'd build him with speed, high accuracy, and then use his A1 and his A3, and then we're using the heal component of his A2 to just keep him alive. So he's very versatile in that sense. So I think actually he gets a lot of bad rep for being a bad champion, but looking at his kit now, based on his buffs, you know, he also got a bit of a speed buff as well. He's actually a lot more flexible. He can actually do his job much better now that things are going to happen on a guaranteed basis. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at how I've built him and the way I've built him to start with, which is the third option I suggested, which is a debuff route. We're going to play him through Faction Wars, and then I'm also going to show him in Doom Tower hard, and we're going to look at the hard side of the really top end of Doom Tower, 80 plus. And then I'm going to rebuild him for damage, and we'll see if we can actually get him to pump out some damage or not using build 2. So we're going to look at Faction Wars first. Now, for a very long time, this faction was very limited for AoE decreased defense. And if anyone knows, on the Faction War 21, you have triple Valk wave on wave 2. That is the problem with Night Revenants, why it used to be so hard, was you didn't have an awful lot of control champions with regularity, and you also didn't have a decreased defense to weaken the shield, which basically meant if the Valkyrie got going, you pretty much lost that attempt. You had to re-roll it. And back before they buffed Bystophus, I actually rage booked my Bystophus due to the fact that I couldn't get the reliability out of his A3. So I tried to get the extra 75%, and I eventually got it after a couple of hours, but it was really frustrating. Things have changed since, you know, I did it 6 months ago. Now we've got Thalesia. She has come in and actually is now the AoE decreased defense champion for most people. If they did the fusion for Demitha and got Demitha, they kept it Thalesia. That made a big difference to this account. But if we look at this faction, there's not an awful lot of options. Tomb Lord is obviously the MVP when it comes to Faction Wars, but none of these legendary champions have decreased defense at all, apart from Bystophus and Tomb Lord. In the epics, it's only Thalesia that has it. We don't really have a great ton of revive options apart from Rector Drath is the only one, and that's a single target revive. So trying to get a 3-star is quite tricky, but we do have quite a good amount of control with Miscreated Monster. Although it's not consistent, it is still percentage chance. Burgoth was also a decent option as well. And then obviously the two twins, Sinisha and Skullcrown, they're very strong. Doom Priest was kind of a good option. And then for DPS on the boss, people used to go Faceless. I personally think Whisper is a better option, just because you get this 10% chance to get extra turns, and you still get the ignore defense component that Faceless has, but she just has more damage and more in her kit. She's got a weaken on her A1 as well. If you bring a decreased defense champion like Thalesia, you'll be able to unlock her A3. So we're going to build it without using any of the DPS options that are typically used, and we're going to see how we go. And yeah, let's head over there. So this is a typical kind of team you can run. I've got Bystophus in the lead. He's got a 70 accuracy aura. I didn't cover that earlier. That's actually really high. I think the top is normally 80. So he's, again, thinking of progression here. If you are struggling for stats, he will get you through this content much better. 70 accuracy, that's a big chunk of accuracy. I'm going to use the twins here. That gives me a free revive if they target Skull Crown. I've also got Rector Wrath in here for the boss, and Miscreated Monster to try and help on the wave 2. Now, we have got an affinity issue with Bystophus. He can weak hit the Valkyries, so if you're watching this video and think I'm going to do the same thing, you might bear in mind that you might need to run it a couple of times if you have a bad RNG round. So let's take it through wave 1. Wave 1 is pretty much making sure you hold your abilities back. So we probably have time to kind of do one just to lock everyone out, and you can see now they've pretty much locked out. We did have a couple of weak hits on the Martyr, which is to be expected, but we can just drop a couple of abilities the first rotation. And then this is why we've got Miscreated Monster in here. If one does weak hit, he can cover, hopefully, but he's not 100%. We got really lucky here. Everyone basically got stunned, but that will not happen every single time. Okay, few manual A1s there. Right, so we're on this wave now. So you can see we want Crumble to be active. This, if it doesn't weak hit, is 100%, but we have got 3 Valkyries, and they are weak affinity. So this is where we pray to the RNG gods. Okay, so we've got 2, which is not bad. Now, obviously, we've got Miscreated Monster here, so the idea, hopefully we can get a stun. I'm not going to use A2 here. The Valkyries will damage my turn meter if I do any buffs. So all I want to do right now is just control the waves first. Okay, so this is where the situation I was talking. I'm probably going to end up just rerunning this, because both of the controls on one of those Valkyries failed. Obviously, you're worried about 3-starring more than anything else, so you might just have to try it a few times. You don't lose anything by giving it another go. Your keys are still safe. So again, I'm just going to run this through now and get back to that Valkyrie wave. Okay, attempt number 2. Can we land all these things? We're going to do Crumble. We get worse RNG this time, which is not great. Can we get a double stun? Okay, so we got a double stun. So now we can basically A1 here because we'll get more damage. Again, I'm not using any buffs where I don't need to use them right now. I can afford to take a few hits if I need to. The good thing with Bystophus here is he's got the block active skills on his A1, so we can try and get a few more out, knowing that we didn't land it. And again, we've got a stun on Miscreated Monster's A1, so you can see how what we're really doing here is we're just trying to target and stop them from taking a turn, because it's taking a turn that will kill you. And at this point now, we've won this round because we're about to kill one of the Valks. The other one is controlled. Miscreated Monster's doing a job as well. Just keep that. And again, his A1 has got a True Fear as well. It's a really great kit for this kind of job now that it's been buffed. It's much more reliable. You might just have to try it. That was 2 attempts for me, and now I'm through the wave. At this point, for this boss, the only thing we need to do is kill this left ad. He has a provoke. It's quite annoying. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that out there for decreased defense. We are going to buff here. And then what we're going to try and do is stun. Now, I've got a feeling this boss also steals buffs. So what you want to do is be a bit careful about ally protection with Miscreated Monster. You should probably not put that up at all, unless you really need to, because if she steals ally protection, it's going to be very difficult, this boss, to kill it. He will kill your Miscreated Monster, just do your own damage. But the purpose here first, kill the left ad. You can probably ignore the right ad, it's only going to do a leech, it's not really that majorly important. There we go, we've got a counter attack. My Skull Crown and Sinacia are in Avenging as well, so this should go a lot quicker than potentially other people might have. So now we're just going to A1 through, and I will speed this up, and then we'll see at the end that it was successful. Okay, after a bit of a frustrating turn where the boss stole unkillable just as he did his health swap, we finally got it done. Now obviously this took 14 minutes. You could probably speed it up with a Faceless or a Whisper, but Bystophus got us through the hard part of this floor, which is the Valkyrie waves. So let me just show you how I've built Bystophus right now. I have him built in the third way that I think you can build him, which is high accuracy, high speed. He's a debuffer. He is a control champion. He is around about 216 speed, 500 accuracy, and then I've just gone for survivability. I haven't focused on any sort of damage stats. I've avoided crit rate, because if I want to use him in arena, I don't want to crit. We'll cover that in a second. We've just got base stats. And obviously my Great Hall is pretty fleshed out, so he is buffing a lot of his stats. I've got my Faction Guardians to the HP standard, but other than that, I haven't got any other sort of Faction Guardians or any other empowerment. So These stats, the gear is nothing special. I've got 2 refresh on him. He's in an attack amulet right now just because it's got accuracy on it. Refresh would be quite handy, especially in the Doom Tower waves. So what kind of usage do I think this build has? Well, firstly, you can have him as an arena champion, and there's a specific team comp that I think he could be quite valuable in. Or you could have him in your dungeon running. If you're progressing through any dungeons, you need to control the waves, you're struggling in mid game, he can come into that job. And he can also play a job in Doom Tower. A lot of the Doom Tower champions that you're facing, you don't want him to take a turn, he can come in and lock them down. So I'm going to take a look at the Doom Tower first, and then we're going to go into Arena. In this floor here, I'm just running a standard kind of team, assuming you don't have a Seer. Now obviously if you've got a Seer, you might be running a Seer comp, that's pretty much what everyone runs. But I'm going to assume you haven't got one, which is why you want to use Bystophus. And this is a kind of a team you could run. Gwyneth is a free champion you get from Doom Tower. You could run Isala the Mourner as a speed lead. You could run pretty much anyone you want in that position. I've just got that as a speed lead. You could run anyone over Sylar that's got kind of like turn meter control. A Vizix would be fine. I just prefer Sylar because she places, and you can also run her in the stun set. I've got Scylla the Drake's free champion. Lydia, if you're at floor 82 in Doom Tower Hard, you probably have your Lydia by now, or you should have been focusing on getting it, but that could easily be swapped out for any other one. She's there really for this increased speed and the decreased defense and weaken. And then we've got Bystophus here controlling it. So I'm going to just make a quick change here. I'm going to assume I'm going to survive, and I'm going to go with Brogni instead, just because I've tested this already and I found that the increased attack was actually quite helpful. So Gwyneth in this position is actually my main damage. If you check my last video, you'll see why. And all we're going to do is we're literally just going to control everything. So as soon as this comes up, he's going to put his shield up just for the increased attack, and then we're going to lock them down. At this point, apart from Lissandra, who can obviously deflect and everything, they cannot do anything. So my biggest threat right now is Lissandra, but I'm going to AoE A1. And I'm just going to try and kill him down slowly. Now this team could fail. It's the first time I've tried it. I just wanted to see whether or not the increased attack could speed up the run that I did before. Now Brogni is obviously a bit of a monster champion here. He's going to do some damage. The nice thing with his A2 is it will help keep him alive without needing someone else to keep him alive. So we're going to take some damage now. Obviously they can't do their abilities, so all we're getting is their A1s. Now the nice thing with Gwyneth as well is she can do that, and if anyone has taken any damage, we've got healing. So even though we haven't got a dedicated healer in this team, you know, we haven't got an Apardin, we haven't got a Wither, we haven't got anyone of that stature or that nature, you'll see how we can keep the team pretty much full health between the combination of the shield from Brogni, the healing from Gwyneth. A1 is an AoE as well, which will keep damage. We've got Lydia to stop the revives. So it actually works kind of okay. And this is Doom Tower 82. This is not easy by any means. Now obviously some of these champions are very well built. Brogni is decently built. Lydia, Sylar's around about 300 speed because I use her in arena, but she didn't have to be. Lydia is in a standard sort of accuracy build. It's nothing extremely special, but Bystophus here is doing the job. Now notice, like, obviously we're low health here, so what we're going to do is we're going to pick the only person I really am worried about, which is Foley, and we get a full heal. That Gwyneth heal is really strong. So I'm going to play this through, and then as I did with the faction wars, we'll come at the end and we'll see kind of who's doing the job. Pretty straightforward. So he's not doing a lot of damage, but the fact that A2 does crit means he is providing more than most. Gwyneth is obviously my main damage here. Again, you can pretty much swap anyone out. If you had a Seer comp, then you could look at different things, but it does go to show that the recent changes now means that he's much more reliable. His power and his value has gone up in this particular role. Now in Arena, 2 champions that came out recently, which were Vlad and Constantine, actually make him quite useful for that team comp. So I've got a few easier wins in Gold 5 here. This is obviously not really fully Gold 5 meta. And I've built a team here which is this kind of comp. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what Constantine does, he's actually quite a hard hitter because of this A2. So he'll attack all enemies twice, which is good for a rota situation. Each hit will ignore 10% if of the target's defense if they're under leech, decrease defense, and block active skills. So the kind of the idea with this setup was he's meant to work with Vlad. Vlad will put the leech out, and then you can put the decreased defense in and block active skills. But the fact that Vlad is obviously not doing it all in one go means really you can only manage to get the leech out, which is still good, 10% ignore defense when you add it up with Savage and you add it up with everything else. And the other thing with Vlad, obviously, which is quite good, which I think a lot of people don't really notice, is that's a 50% turn meter drop. It's actually really strong. The steal on auto can be a bit awkward because he never seems to go after Arbiter, but as an actual turn meter drop, there aren't many champions in the game that can drop as much turn meter in one ability as Vlad can, and he's Void. He does hit, so you have to be careful of sort of proccing any masteries in terms of turn meter and resurgent, but this is, you know, he's a good turn meter control champion. So the idea here in this team comp is we're going to have Leech from Vlad and turn meter control, so these two are speed tuned. Then we're going to have Bystophus come in and do his Crumble ability, which sets up drop defense and block active skills. And then Constantine effectively has his A2 fully unlocked. And keep in mind, he's got Helm Smasher, that's 25%. He's got, I think he's in Savage and Cruel, which is 30%. So we're already up to 55%. Then we're going to get another 30%. So we're at 85% ignore defense before we even do any sort of defense debuffs. So it's really strong. Now, obviously, one thing this team doesn't have is any buff removal, which is a bit of a concern, and you'll see if they've got sort of things such as reaction that could have an impact as well. But as a pure concept, let's take a look and see what kind of damage we're going to see out of Constantine. So again, the setup would be Arbiter speed boost into turn meter drop, slow them down, then we're going to crumble. Obviously we're going to probably get a weak hit here or there, so we've got one here, so 3 of these now should be ignore defense, and it pretty much annihilates them. Obviously, these are not top teams. I think if I can... This is probably a much top team. It depends if I'm fast enough here. This is more of what you would find in the top-end meta. A Kaimar with a Siphi. So as long as I go first, I should win this battle quite easily. Obviously, we've got to be careful of Resurgence, Swift Power, Reaction, the usual stuff, Stone Skin. Now, this is a problem because there's a Necret. So in this example, it's not ideal to run Bystophus, just because we know the Necret is going to be an issue, and you'll see why. I'll just run it just to show you an example. You'd want to bring a full buff strip somewhere, because it's all going to go on Candy. He's got too much, and we've also got Stone Skin. So there's no way we're going to kill that partnership. We can't do any sort of drop defense on him. We can't crumble. So we've managed to get the Duchess. We'll probably kill the Duchess if they didn't have Swift Parry, of course. And you'll see now we're probably just going to get one shot because this is a squishy team. Even though Bystophus is built roughly tanky, he's still not crazy. There we go. So that's why you wouldn't run that. What you would probably do for that type of team is not run Bystophus. So that's just an example of how you can use him as a debuffer in Arena. He works very well in Void Tower. He works very well in, if you're progressing through the game, works great in Faction Wars. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually rerun a new build for him, and I'm going to see how much we can actually get him to hit in terms of damage. Okay, so I have gone for a low crit rate build here. We have only got 20% here. I'm actually now going to do masteries here to improve this build further. We've got the old ones here. We're going to change this up now, and I'm not going to go for crit rate. I don't really want crit rate. I want attack. So we're going to build something like this for Arena specifically. Do we want this debuff? Yes, we do. The reason why I have chosen Opportunist specifically is I plan to use the team with Gergo. So we want to try and mitigate some of the freeze loss by adding 12% here. And then we could probably just throw in, probably not going to get debuffed. We'll just see what we get. And then from a secondary tree, we're going to try and get Laura Steel because I have some Cruel gear. So that'll give me a little bit more attack. So where does that end us up? We got one Cruel. We haven't gone Savage because the optimizer told me this was a better build. I've run out of silver to level up the ring. That could potentially triple roll into a attack percentage. The helm is kind of insane. It's a triple roll at 25%, but the rest is just attack percentage, crit damage. I've aimed for around about 200 speed. You can see I'm not looking for crit. I'm looking for crit damage, attack percentage, and then a bit of speed. We are in attack percentage boots. An attack banner with some attack percentage. The banner is actually low, it's only a 5-star. That could be massively improved. But because of his massive base stats, because we can get some from Masteries, Classic Arena, Great Hall, we end up with just shy of 8,000 attack and 268% crit damage with a speed of 200. Now, if you can get Empowerment going with this, a +4 Bystophus actually gains a substantial amount because he's got such a high base attack, which means that 40% on a normal champion who does damage at 1600, you get an extra 5% comparatively to other champions. So empowerment wise, he actually rises up the tier list a bit higher than other champions. For example, a Ray A2 pre-empowerment is stronger than a Bystophus A2. Now for Ray, A2 is the Arcane Wave. This ability is slightly stronger than Bystophus when we compare him pre-empowerment. After empowerment, Bystophus then is stronger because of his base attack. So that's the build we've got him in. The idea of this then is we're going to run him with a champion that can do AoE block active skills. Now there are only 3 champions now with Karato in the game that can do this kind of team. So the team that I'm going to be using it with is Countess Lix. You can use it with Karato. For example, affinity is a consideration here. If you're facing a number of force champions, then Karato could come in and do the same role. He can do block active skills on an AoE. The other champion that can do it is Lugan the Steadfast. I forget what affinity Lugan is. I have got him. I've never really used him because he's kind of dated. He is a Bannerlord. He's Spirit as well. So you kind of can see like Karato probably replaces Lugan now as that kind of Spirit role. There isn't a Void role, unfortunately. That's just something you're going to have to deal with. So it's a risk to this team. But Karato, Fox Hunter, he does do block active skills on a 2-turn, 100% chance. So that's an option if you wanted to have a pivot. But the way that this team is going to work is I'm using Gergo, obviously a Void Legend. You don't have to use Gergo. Gergo would be better just because he does a buff strip. So if anyone has got block debuffs from an immunity set, this team will fail. So the Gergo kind of strips those buffs. We're going to be using Countess Lix. I haven't got decreased defense here, so that's something to consider. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. We'll see what happens. So we're going to do the standard setup here. We're going to freeze them. We're just going to drop the turn meter of someone here. And then Countess Lix is going to come in with her A3. Put everything up. Now this might struggle here. We haven't got block decreased defense, and we haven't got sort of any other, they've got increased defense on this, so it might not do enough damage. But let's just see. This should 100% crit on everyone. Okay, so that's not bad. Reaction stopped him from dying. But the good thing about Gergo is obviously they're frozen. Block them all. We drop the turn meter. Block active skills. Let's have a look and slow it down. How much damage does this guy do? 75,000 to 100,000. Now keep in mind, there is no decreased defense out. He's not in Savage, only one Cruel. Yes, he's got Helm Smasher, but that's quite substantial. So far, as long as I go first, I win. I haven't gone first, so this is going to be Watch Gembo, annihilate my team. Yeah. That's a strong Gembo. That is always going to be the problem is with this type of team. It's a speed team. If you don't go first, you don't win. There's no way of surviving. So we go first here. Gergo is going to put this control out, so we're in a good position. Now, she should land all of these. Perfect. And now we should be in a good position to actually test it. How much damage can it one-shot a proper, I'd say a decently meta team? Yes. 109,000 on a target without Savage and without decreased defense. So there you have it, guys. That is Bystophus. I think he's actually a very flexible champion now since his buff. He actually can be used in teams to a high level of consistency, which was his problem before. That 75% chance now being 100% chance. He can go into your teams if you're struggling for progression. He'll get you through the waves. If you want a debuffer that has those two skills combined in High Doom Tower, and you don't have a Seer team with a reset, or you don't have a Poison Explode, it's an option for you to consider bringing out of the vault. As a nuker, he has got some decent damage, especially if you've got multiple ones of them. An empowered +4 Bysto is probably very strong. He probably matches an unempowered Trunder, if not beats it. So don't necessarily sit on there thinking, oh, he's a rubbish champion. he could do a job, and you can build him in either a non-crit rate way or a crit rate way, depending on what team you want to use. As always, if you've liked these videos, please give it a like, and if you want these videos coming straight into your feed, please subscribe to the channel. It does help us keep producing this content, and I'll probably be back next week with another video which will be more focused on clan boss, because I've got some interesting ideas of different teams to try out in that area of the game. So yeah, I'll catch you in the next video.